Welcome to The Big Rich Show. This podcast will focus on conversations with friends and acquaintances within the four-wheel drive industry. Many of the people that I will be interviewing, you may know the name, you may know some of the history, but let's get in depth with these people and find out what truly makes them a four-wheel drive enthusiast. So now's the time to sit back, grab a cold one, and enjoy our conversation.
Whether you're crawling the red rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Why should you read 4Low Magazine? Because 4Low Magazine is about your lifestyle, the four-wheel drive adventure lifestyle that we all enjoy. Rock crawling, trail riding, event coverage, vehicle builds, and do-it-yourself tech, all in a beautifully presented package. You won't find 4Low on the newsstand rack, so subscribe today and have it delivered to you. On today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich, we have Andy Lilienthal. Andy has been around the off-road and rock crawling world for quite a while. I know he got his start in some other things, media stuff, but I've known him basically for probably his entire career at Warren, which I thought was one stint, but ends up being a bunch of them. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Andy's personal life. And Andy, thank you so much for coming on board.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. So let's start off with where were you born and raised?
Yeah, so I was born in St. Paul, Minnesota, and spent about almost 18 years there. I lived in Mississippi, actually, for a short period of time, about 18 months as a youngster, and then moved back up to the frigid north. And then went off to Wisconsin in 96, I guess. I went off to Wisconsin and went off to school there, and then ended up living full-time in Milwaukee, Wisconsin for about a little over 5 years. And then made the move out to the West Coast in 2006 to take the job with Warren Industries. And that's where I've been full-time ever since.
Okay, well, let's dive deep into some of this history. With growing up in St. Paul, that's Twin Cities area. Like you said, it's the frigid northern part of the country. We have a daughter and a son that live up in that area, and yeah, it's cold. So, what did you do growing up for entertainment or activity?
Oh, what did I do? So, I guess what did I do? Boy, I did a lot of car stuff when I was a little kid. Like Hot Wheels were my jam. Right. Hot Wheels, Matchbox stuff as a young kid. I never really got into the action figure thing that much. My parents bought me my first Hot Wheels, I guess, when I was 2 years old, and I was hooked on cars ever since. So I played video games, mostly car racing video games, that kind of stuff as a kid. And then when I was old enough to actually have a car, that's when, the floodgates to my automotive passion really just kind of opened up. It's all I wanted to do was car stuff, whether that was just cruising around as a kid in high school or working on cars, in college, that kind of stuff. Everything I've done has always been about cars. Even like when I was in college, I have a psychology degree, which doesn't do much for me in the off-roading industry. But
I beg to differ. I could probably pass and get a degree, having been an event promoter and dealing with everybody.
Fair enough. But I just remember thinking when I was in college, how am I going to get into the automotive industry with a psych degree? And I happen to have I shouldn't say happen to, I planned and ended up with a minor in journalism as well as a minor in history. And I ended up getting a job working for the school newspaper back in the 90s. And boy, I found out that I really liked writing.
Was
And
that college paper or high
that
school?
was it
College.
was
Okay.
college paper, yeah. And I ended up being a writer for the entertainment section, and then the year after that, I became the editor of the entertainment section and had writers working for me. And by golly, I was able to sneak in some car content into that publication. And my editor at the time, Corey Klein, who's still a good friend of mine, good last name too,
Yeah.
and he once told me, "You write best about what you know," and I still believe that very true. I think that's a very true statement. And so, my passion, I have a few passions, but my still number one by far is still cars and trucks and automobiles and all that. And so when I graduated college, a few months later, I was able to actually get a job as a magazine editor uh, at a publication called Scale Auto Magazine, and that was all about building and collecting model cars and trucks.
Okay.
And so
Before
it was just
RC.
like it was yes, this publication did not have anything to do with remote control.
Okay.
It was all about mostly about building and collecting plastic kits. So
Okay.
maybe the younger listeners aren't as familiar with building and collecting plastic models, but its golden era was really like the 60s and 70s, where you'd go buy a plastic model kit and you'd glue it together and paint it and detail it. And that's how I really got into the industry, because a lot of these features I was writing, despite the fact they were made out of plastic, I was writing and editing features on the history of these vehicles, and what you could do to, for instance, replicate a 392, or the right kind of throttle return spring on a carburetor, or the history of Mopar colors, that kind of stuff. So all those things gave me this background on full-size car stuff. So eventually I had wanted to move to Oregon for many years. My father had moved out here in the early 90s, and I found this job working for Warren Industries. And I remember thinking, well, that would be cool. Like, I wasn't into off-roading at the time, but I respected off-road stuff. I liked looking through four-wheeler and off-road and all those publications. And I certainly saw the Warren name on shows on Sunday motorsports programming on TNN and Spike and all that stuff. It's probably before Spike. And so I thought, well, what the heck, I like cars and trucks, and I can write, but this is for a PR position. So, but generally, and very often, as you're probably very well aware, a lot of public relations people used to be writers and editors, and a lot of writers and editors used to be PR people. So it's a very revolving door. It's not necessarily a revolving door, but people swap sides of the desk all the time.
Right.
And that I did, and I got the job, and that's when I really got into four-wheel drives. And I would say I really, really got into four-wheel drives back in like 2010, which is when I bought my first four-wheel drive vehicle to work on.
Okay. I'm going to try to remember to come back to that. What was your first vehicle?
My first car overall, or my first off-roader?
Your first vehicle that you ever got to drive.
Yeah, okay. First car I ever got to, I'm just going to go with, it was one of two. To first ever actually drive by myself, it was either a 1990 Jeep Cherokee 5-speed Laredo, and then an oddball, which was a 1992 Mitsubishi Expo LRV. And that's a vehicle most people don't remember. It was only sold for a few years in the United States, and we had one. And it ended up being my first car. I took that off to college, and I drove it in high school. And it was my mom's car, but she let me have it. She had another car to drive, and so it was not a cool car at the time. It was not something. I had friends with 4x4s, and I had some friends with muscle cars, and and I mean, looking back, and I remember at the time my mom saying stuff like this, but I remember looking back thinking, I'm just glad I had wheels. I was lucky to have wheels back then.
Right.
But at the time, I saw this kid who had this lifted CJ in college or in high school, and it was so cool, and then these guys that had the latest and greatest, cars in college, and I had this minivan, had a sliding door, but it wasn't even as big as a minivan and whatever. But looking back, it was exceptionally practical, and it kind of put me on this road of what I like to call either oddities or oddballs or underdogs. The vehicles that people just don't think about or had forgotten about or aren't the mainstream. And I'll never forget, back in St. Paul, there used to be this area along University Avenue. It was a big long stretch where everyone would go cruising, and I'm not talking just like kids. I'm talking hot rods and big dollar stuff. And there was a drive-in called Porky's, and Porky's is where all the hot rodders hung out. And my buddy Dan Berdesky, he had a 65 Falcon with a Mustang engine in it. He'd put in it, and his parents had hot rods. And I remember going down there one time. I was maybe like 15, and he was 16 or something. Anyway, we were there, and there was a Ford Mustang convertible, but it was a McLaren ASC. So before Ford was making drop top Fox body Mustangs, McLaren ASC was chopping the tops off and making these convertibles.
Right.
And I remember seeing him in like Road and Track or Car and Drive or something like that. And when we went over to him, and he started talking to us, and I remember saying, like, "Is this a McLaren?" He's like, "Yeah." And he said something that has always resonated with me and really stuck with me, was, you can see a brand new Corvette or a Ferrari or something like that on the road, and you're like, "Well, that's a really nice car." But if you see something really out there and different, that's what's going to stick with you. You're like, you can see lots of Corvettes and Ferraris and, whatever, but it's that guy with like a 500 cubic inch engine sticking out of the hood of a Pacer or something like that. That's going to really go, what is that? Like, that's crazy. And I guess I've always gravitated towards that, both in on-road stuff and in off-road stuff, that I totally respect and admire everybody's automotive passions. I tell people, if we're united by anything, we're united by horsepower, right? I don't care if it's an on-road, off-road, gas, electric, whatever it is. We all have the same bond. If we can, I know everybody, we all tease each other about, which, who's more capable on the trail, the guy in the Jeep or the guy in the Land Cruiser or whatever. But at the end of the day, we're really all doing this for the same reason. But
Exactly.
But I've always kind of gravitated towards more unique stuff.
I've been an underdog driver, I think, most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
When I grew up in high school, it was 74 when I got my first driver's license, and everybody, they had the 60 muscle cars, late 60s, early 70s muscle cars.
Yeah.
I drove a 54 Volkswagen Bug.
Oh, that's awesome.
Then I ended up with a 71 Ranchero with a 351 Cleveland.
Ooh.
And while everybody else was building El Caminos.
Yeah.
But like that Ranchero, you're talking about, horsepower and stuff. I was driving across Nevada on 50 on one of those long stretches in one of those valleys between the mountain ranges, and I saw some headlights coming up behind me, and the guy, I was doing probably 100, 105, just cruising, and I knew it wasn't a patrol officer because I had the radar going, radar detector, but all of a sudden this car just smokes by me at least 150, 160. I mean, just basically blew my doors off. And I tried to wind it up and couldn't catch it. At the next town, I go to stop to get gas, and there's this Porsche 914, the little pancake flat one, and it had a 350 Chevy that was all built up in it. Of course, it didn't really need to be built up, just geared right to do those kind of speeds because of the power to weight. but I just looked at that and was like, yeah, now that's cool.
Yeah, totally. No,
The
that's
first
awesome.
V8 conversion I'd seen in one.
Yeah, yeah.
So then your first cars, then what was your, in those early years, high school, what was your thing? I mean,
Hmm.
I know a lot of people in that area played hockey if they did sports, or bowled, a lot of indoor stuff. Is
Yeah.
that, did you have that, or did you do your own thing, or were you more scholastic based?
No, I was, you know, as a kid of the '90s, you know, '80s and '90s, you know, my friends and I'd hang out. We'd, you know, watch movies, play video games, and we'd cruise a lot. You
Okay.
know, summer or winter, we'd hop in somebody's car, and you know, I had one friend with a Trans Am. You know, it was an '82 Trans Am, which, you know, if he heard me say this, you know, it wasn't that great, but he loved it. You know. And then I had another friend that had a '74 Dodge Tradesman van with a 360 in it, and you know, we promptly took out a Sawzall and cut the mufflers off on it, and drove around for about an hour, thinking this was the sweetest thing ever. And it was a '70s van, man. We called it Big Fat, and it had the shag interior, the wraparound bench seat, the portal windows, everything like that. It was a '70s shag and wagon. It was hilarious. And so, you know, we did a lot of car stuff. You know, I had a couple of friends that really worked on cars. At the time, I wasn't working on cars, but yeah, you know, we did indoor stuff in the wintertime, you know. And yeah, even I was an okay student. I wasn't, you know, I was certainly no honor roll student, that's for sure. So, but yeah, we tried to stay warm. I did ski, which also, you know, if you're going to live in that part of the country, it's a
Yes.
good idea to take up an outdoor winter sport. I don't care if it's ice fishing, skiing, snowmobiling, something. I probably am the only kid from Minnesota who's never been on a snowmobile, though. So
Really? I
yeah,
just
I'd
did
love to
that for
change
the
that, by
first
the way.
time.
I'd love to do it. You know, I just never had friends that had them, and you know, we didn't have them. So
Well, when I was really young, we were, you know, I spent a lot of time at Squaw Valley growing up skiing,
uh huh.
and I had a chance to get on a. They had a little track in the middle of the parking lot that just went around, and you know, you went around a little track around in circles, always making left-hand turns,
Uh huh.
and kind of like NASCAR. But you know, they wouldn't let, you know, they weren't. I mean, back in the '60s, you know, early '70s, their snowmobiles were not anything like they are now.
Right.
Never got a chance to do it. Well, Shelly goes, you know, we should go snowmobiling. And I was like, yeah, I've never been. And she goes, really? So we just got back from Idaho in a trip that took us up there, and we snowmobiled for a day. And it was really cool. I could see doing it again. I don't want to ever live in the cold again, you know, to be completely honest.
Sure.
You know, are we ever going to move back to Idaho? Probably not.
Right.
You
Right.
know, are we going to move to Minnesota or Montana? Yeah, no, not unless the end of the world is coming and it's the safest place.
Sure.
You know, but yeah, we're not. I like warmth, chasing
Yeah.
70s.
Yeah. The older I get, the more I appreciate warm weather stuff. So I highly doubt I'll be moving back to the upper Midwest anytime soon. So
But I highly recommend going on one of those. You know, renting a snowmobile. You and Mercedes would have a great time doing it.
yeah,
know.
you know, it's funny. One of her previous boyfriends, he actually raced snowcross,
Oh,
and
wow.
she's been on race snowmobiles and all this stuff. Just not me.
Right.
So
So then, your car culture. You know, building models.
yep.
I grew up in the years that, yes, you know, we built models. We had Matchbox, then Hot Wheels came out, and you know, the Tonka trucks and everything. I mean, that was my front yard. Never had a great lawn in it because we had it all dug up for, you know, little cities almost. And we built Revell and Amp models were the companies that I remember, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
But we would buy like two models at a time and then kind of intermarry them so that we build our own,
Yeah.
monster creations, you might say.
Yeah, there's a term for that. They call it kit bashing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't realize there was a term for it. Interesting. I guess you would know that, being that you were, writing for Scalar magazine. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a really interesting time, because it was a hobby that was, and arguably can you could say that it's dying. It's just, people's attention spans aren't long enough. People, everybody wants instant stuff and instant gratification and all that stuff, and it takes time to build a model kit. You generally can't even build one in a day. A lot of times it takes multiple days, and but yeah, there's a whole culture around that. There are model car shows, and some of them are well attended, and it's just like going to a cruise-in or a car show of full-size cars, except everything's about a foot long and on a table. And it's incredible the passion some of these people have, and the details. And I mean, there were people that were there was one guy, I think his name was Bill Gary, and I think he was from Ohio. And the guy had to have been 6'5", and he was his hands were like meat hooks, just huge guy. And he did the most intricate models. I always wondered how he even did it. But yeah, it was a neat time. And as a kid fresh out of college, it was a cool thing to do. And I mean, I built models as a kid too. I remember going to Robert's Drug, I think it was Robert's Drug, Snyder Drug, I don't remember the name of it, in Woodbury, Minnesota, and buying a model of a 68 Chevy Camaro. And I was so excited to build it. I opened the box in the car and lost the front right wheel. So I always had 3 wheels. But I remember it was, my dad was a modeler. He grew up modeling airplanes. And then he'd hang them like in dogfight positions over my bed as a kid, with a fishing line. So I was how do you say, familiar with it. And but yeah, being able to do it with car stuff was pretty cool.
So then, how do you use the psychology? I know we're bouncing around here, but how do you use the psychology in what you've done in your career?
Well, everybody I meet first gets a personality inventory. No, I'm just kidding.
Here, sit on this couch.
Yes. Look at this ink blot. Tell me what you see. So that's a really good question. And I think that the coursework that I did in psychology is really sort of this adjacent thing that probably just helps with interpersonal communications between people. Just because I think that, I'm clearly not, the joke is, oh, you're probably analyzing me right now. No, I'm not analyzing. No, it's not true. But, I do think that the idea of learning about the way people act and quite literally the psychology behind people is probably advantageous to me being in communications. My father was a sociology major. He had a master's in sociology, and he was a salesman all his life. And it's probably one of those things where it absolutely has zero direct correlation to being a salesperson, but having an understanding of human behavior is probably a good asset to have as a sales guy, or as I am a communications or PR guy. Right. It's probably a good thing. Now, I'm not digging through psychological studies being like, well, why does he act like that? But just kind of an overview of I think I probably have a better understanding of that than somebody that doesn't have a psych degree. But
right, trying to get people to react to the communication that you're putting out.
Yeah, and I think that pair that with the journalism minor but nothing was more of an asset to me after graduating college, and truly, than the fact that I had experience working at this school newspaper. Because I, unlike a lot of other students, I had some experience. So when I went to interview for a magazine, I had journalism experience. I knew what AP style was when writing. I knew all the proofreading marks, and I had published articles and had writers and all that stuff. And I know it was at a college level, but I took it very seriously. And there's, by the way, a lot of people who don't take it very seriously. And as somebody who runs a magazine, I'm sure you realize there are people that are adults that don't take it very seriously. But you know, I mean,
that's why Shelley's the editor.
And so, you know, I mean, back then, you know, the student newspaper paid $14.75 a story, right? That's, you know, that's some beer money for the week, right? But
Right.
a lot of people just didn't take it seriously. But yeah, anyway, you know, kind of cut them full circle. I think that having some psychology experience was probably a good thing when dealing with people as much as I do.
Excellent. And then with the Scalar magazine, after that stint, was that when you went right to your next stop was Warren?
No, after Scale Auto, I went to a trade publication for the hobby industry called Model Retailer. And Model Retailer went to hobby shops around the US, Canada, and I believe Australia as well. And now that actually included pretty much all the hobbies. So in addition to die-cast and plastic scale models, it also included military models. It included board games, RC cars, slot cars, board games, books, all kinds of stuff. So I got to basically, I was a toy tester, and it was a lot of fun. So
Wow.
we would get a new Team Losi gas powered RC car in, you know, 8th scale monster truck, and you know, they'd send it home with you, and you know, you had to write a review about it, you know, and it had to be objective and all that stuff. This wasn't a paid placement. This was an objective, you know, pros cons kind of thing. And then generally you got to keep it too, which was fun. So I had a small fleet of RC cars, a couple of RC planes, and a lot of slot cars. I really got into slot cars. I was into slot cars as a kid, like the little HO scale Tyco stuff. But these were 1/32 scale cars and trucks, and so a little bit bigger. So I was actually on a slot car racing league back in Wisconsin, which was a ton of fun. So
That's cool. I can remember going to what was called Playland, I think it was, in San Francisco. It was on the coast, just right off of, it was an area that was like an amusement park and stuff. And it had circle tracks for remote control car, or for slot cars. It had drag strip. So guys were building cars to run, 100 foot.
Yep.
That, with cutting and creating their own tires out of sponge material.
Mm-hmm.
It was, the stuff that guys were doing back then was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I was blown away by it. But
yeah, slot cars were a lot of fun. Now, there used to be all kinds of commercial tracks where you'd bring your car to the track, and they had these huge elaborate layouts, and they're almost all gone. There was one left when I was in, maybe two left. There was one left in Milwaukee and one in Chicago, I think, if I remember correctly. But yeah, that's a bygone era kind of thing. So
right, because now people just do it digitally.
That's right.
Which to me is not as much fun.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's something still fun about tactile analog things these days.
Yes.
So.
I think things are probably a whole nother idea for a podcast, but the retro, everything goes retro. I don't care if it's clothing styles, but games. I saw Walkman, somebody walking around with like a Walkman the other day, and tapes are coming back, and the old stereo systems, that would be the countertop type stereo systems with record players. All that stuff's making a comeback after everything went, to, little
what's
tiny.
Old is new.
Yeah. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So maybe someday I'll be back in fashion. Doubt it. Anyway. So then the trade magazine, how long were you there?
I was there about a year and a half, and then I was just itching to move out west, and I loved the all the things that were associated with the Pacific Northwest, the outdoors, the skiing, the car culture, all kinds of things, and I just I talked to my wife. She knew I wanted to move out there. She'd been out there a number of times with me, and we just decided, well, if we're gonna change our careers, we're gonna do it out there. So I started sending out resumes, and I got this job eventually at Warren. And kind of like I was saying earlier, I was familiar with the brand, seeing it in off-road magazines and on television, and lo and behold, I went in for the interview, and I got the call back while I was still out visiting my dad, and got the job offer, and I was stoked. I was really, really stoked. So it was kind of the goal. The goal was to get into the automotive industry, the full size automotive industry.
Right.
Slot cars and model cars and that stuff was fun, and you got a taste of the car culture, but it was different than actual cars. I mean, this is what I had really wanted to do. And lo and behold, I did it. So I ended up, my initial title with Warren was PR, let's see, what was it? It was copywriter / public relations. And so I was writing press releases and catalog copy, brochure copy, back when we were doing primarily printed things. So, it wasn't until a couple of years later where they went really heavy into digital like everybody else too.
Right.
So I left Warren in 2008 after a layoff, and with clearly with lots of other people in 2008.
Yes.
And I went freelance, and I started my own business, which I still have, and started consulting and doing public relations and marketing copy on the side. Warren was actually a client of mine, believe it or not, so I stayed active with them. But I also started my first blog site, which was called Subcompact Culture, which was all about small cars. And there was kind of a niche. Small cars were becoming a big deal as the economy was getting bad, gas prices were going up and all this. People started getting rid of thirsty large vehicles that cost a lot of money and started moving over towards smaller vehicles. And I always had at least one small car, and I thought, well, let's try this. And I still have the site. I don't do a whole lot with it anymore because of the decline in small car stuff, but I still do post to it. We still have a Facebook group, Instagram, all that stuff. And then I got rehired at Warren in 2010 full time. And I remember my boss at the time saying, what is it that you think this company needs from a PR standpoint? And I said, social media. He said, this is going to be a big thing for businesses. And they had a MySpace account, I think, at the time. And they had just started a Facebook account. And but with the help of the e-commerce manager and a number of other people, we really took social media to the next level for the automotive aftermarket. I mean, Warren had one of the biggest followings in the entire automotive aftermarket for a while. I mean, we were winning awards and competitions and stuff like that for social media back in the early 2010s, and that was exciting. I mean, there was this new way to talk to our customers and talk to our potential users, and we were getting feedback and we were getting requests and complaints and comments and everything, and it was kind of a big deal, I think, for people to get featured on our page because we were so big at the time. I mean, people would come to, I was at Rally on the Rocks in Moab in 2011. And for those of you that aren't familiar with it, it's a UTV event in Moab. And I remember taking photos, and these two guys were like, "Are you with Warren?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "Are these going to end up on your Facebook page?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh my God, that's awesome." I remember they were so stoked to be on your Facebook page. Anyway, I kind of call that golden era of social media between 2010 and 2013, where if you were working it, you had cool content and all that stuff. You were rewarded, and you could grow your following and all that stuff. And it was a big deal when we crossed over 100,000 Facebook fans, and we still have a very large Facebook group, but social media has changed so incredibly much since 2010, 2013.
Yeah, no kidding. It used to be more personal.
Totally.
And now it's it's not so personal anymore.
Yeah, there's a lot of pay to play, We complain about how, this incredible photo that you took and posted to Instagram completely tanks, while this photo of your 4x4 at the grocery store gets like, 1 billion likes. You're like, why? This makes no sense at all. It's so frustrating. But everybody does it. Everybody's doing it. But you kind of wonder what the next steps are in social media and social media marketing, and what the next platform is going to be, and where's this taking all of us? I mean, I tell you, yesterday I was I've been writing an article on tires, and I just had to step away and do. I told my wife I got to do something analog for a while. Like I started grab my guitar and started playing guitar for a while, and acoustic guitar too. So not even electric, and I just want to just do something tactile. And I think that's one reason why I love working on cars so much too. It's I jokingly call it garage therapy sometimes, although sometimes I feel like I need to go to therapy after working on a car. Getting out there, stepping away from the screen, turning some wrenches and, moving towards a goal, whether it's something as simple as, replacing an air filter or just changing out a set of shocks to, completely rebuilding the front end on an old 4x4 to take it on a crazy trip. I was telling my wife, Mercedes, who's also a full-time writer, I was saying to her, like, I get a lot of satisfaction out of taking something that needs repairing it, and then doing something cool with it. We did this thing called the Alcan 5000 Rally back in 2020, and we took this old Japanese domestic market Mitsubishi turbo diesel 4x4 called a Pajero, took it from Kirkland, Seattle, Washington, all the way up to the Arctic Ocean and down to Anchorage. And I put a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and money into this thing to get it to do this trip, and we did. We finished it, and there's a certain amount of pride that you get out of doing that. That I don't get out of playing a video game or chatting with people on social media. I like communicating and talking with people. Don't get me wrong, but there's this satisfaction of being like, what, I put so much work into this, and to be able to do it. Like I can't imagine that feeling of that people who like finish KOH must have, after doing this, King of the Hammers, after doing this insane race, and knowing that you put your blood, sweat, tears, you turned every single bolt on this thing, and you welded stuff up and wired it, and then you run this 200+ mile grueling rally, and it did it. I mean, that must be such an amazing accomplishment. And I feel like I got a little taste of how that feels when I completed this rally after putting so much freaking work into this 4x4.
Right. And did it perform well?
Yeah, it performed great. We didn't have any breakdowns. We didn't have any mechanical issues.
Awesome.
Despite the fact it was 42 below up in Inuvik, up in the Northwest Territories, we had
42 below.
Yeah, 42 below zero. That's the air temperature. That's without
Right.
a wind chill. And thankfully, we didn't have a whole lot of wind when we were up there, but it's dang cold. We got to drive the ice roads that were featured on Ice Road Truckers, that kind of stuff. But we had safeguards on the vehicle, like a coolant heater. So Webasto makes this product called a Thermotop Evo, and it's a pump with a heater in it, and it just pumps the coolant and heats it. Even when the car's off, it just pulls from the fuel tank and uses the batteries that we had twin Optima deep cell batteries on it. And so for 90 minutes before we would start the thing, we'd circulate the coolant, we'd go turn it on, it immediately fires right up, and we have heat. And we had some heated Shieldman seats that were great, and the thing did fantastically. And when you have literally completely rebuilt the suspension and the whole front 4-wheel drive system down to the needle bearings and all this stuff, when you don't have a single problem with it and you get home, you're like, yes, I did it. And it worked. So I love the pride associated with doing your own work on a vehicle, and plus which, if something does go wrong, you're the only one you can blame. And There's also you just learn so much, And back when I was in the hobby industry, and just as I was getting out of it, they were coming out with the ready to run uh, RC cars. So back when I was into RC cars, by the way, back in high school, and I had bought a Team Losi Junior T, which was the entry level, but a good truck, but it was like an entry level truck. But you got a box the size of a desktop, and it came with about 16 trillion parts. I mean, you were putting the balls of the ball bearing differentials. You were putting the shock oil in the shock absorbers. But back in the late excuse me, around 2005, mid 2000s, they were coming out with ready to run stuff. So the consumer didn't have to build it. So while that was great and all, because you could get into this really fun, fast RC car, the first time you crashed it into a tree or a guardrail or something like that at a track, if you didn't know how to fix it. And so RC car shops were opening up service departments, just like full-size car shops, and charging $70 an hour, $75 an hour. And so, when you work on a car or a truck, you learn how to put it back together, hopefully. And so, I think that, back when I got my first four-wheel drive, I worked on cars. I was into the lowered car scene before I was into the lifted truck scene. And I worked on cars, but I never worked on anything with four-wheel drive hubs, for instance, or a front drive shaft, or anything like that. And they were different. They were a solid front axle. They were way different. And but getting into working on a four-wheel drive was a great learning experience. My first four-wheel drive was a '95 Suzuki, and it was a Sidekick, and I did everything on that. Had a lot of help along the way, but from basic things like doing a brake job on something with front hubs was much more involved than doing a brake job on a lowered Honda or Nissan, and then putting in a rear mechanical locker. I had my buddy Eric Bewley of Zuki World. I went down to his place and he showed me how to do it. And I appreciate it when somebody isn't just like, oh, I'll do it for you. It's, I will show you how to do it. And I have a great coworker at Warren named Chad, and he's super, super knowledgeable, and he'll never do it for you, but he'll show you how to do it, which is great because you just learn about, how am I going to put these rock sliders on my Cherokee? He's bring it in, we'll do it. Okay. Now, he didn't do it for me,
but he walked you
helped.
through it. Right.
But he helped. Don't get me wrong. But, I learned how to do it because he was showing me how to do it. I had the impact gun and putting the bolts in. Well, he's holding it in place, helped me out. But, that for that kind of stuff, for example,
I can't wait to get back to that.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I miss about our lifestyle, living basically on the road, is that we don't have workspace. Like Shelley's art projects are, she can't spread out and do, a multi-day art project because we don't have the space to do that.
Sure.
So everything, if she wants to spend 2 hours, it's like half an hour to set up, half an hour to tear down, and then 1 hour of doing it. Same thing with doing any repair or modifications on the vehicles. It's always like, okay, who's got a shop that I can use? And then, some of the guys that I go visit their shops, they're like, well, just get out of the way and let me do this and we'll get it done. And I guess at my age now, I'm like, okay,
I totally understand.
Because I worked as a mechanic for years. I don't necessarily want the bloody knuckles all the time.
Oh, I completely understand. I've got a few vehicles, and there's always that one time of the year where like they all need work. Just even if it's just there's like always one time of the year where all 5 vehicles need an oil change, and I'm like, usually like, listen, an oil change, okay, fine, 20 minutes, half hour, we're done. But then I'm like, I got to do this 5 times. Some are easier than others. I got to take off this ridiculous skid plate off of one of the vehicles I have. Actually, they all have ridiculous skid plates, but one is just bigger and heavier than the others. but even, I'm not getting any younger. I'm 43, and I just had a unfortunate back injury back in September, and I was sidelined for a while from doing anything car related, and I was on my back for 2 weeks straight. But yeah, I mean, I do have a driveway and a carport and a tool shed and all that stuff, but I don't have a lift, and I don't have a garage. So, I am outside doing this, and if it's a mandatory thing that's got to get fixed, I'm out there bundled up. I've got my crappy water resistant jacket for getting grease all over, and my wife one year for Christmas bought me one of these Milwaukee tool jackets that's got the 12-volt heated pack, and okay, that thing's great. But I'm not in a heated garage with epoxied floors and a lift and a beer fridge.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, someday maybe, but all my wrenching is done in the elements. But I had never really thought about it. Like in your case, yeah, I mean, you don't have a place to do that stuff. You gotta find somewhere. And I've had more times than I'm willing to admit, times where I've had a vehicle that's broken down on the road, and I got to find somebody that can help me, because I'm literally broken down at a filling station in the middle of nowhere, Montana, and then you got to rely on the kindness of strangers to help out sometimes, and or the amazing off-road community that can be so exceptionally helpful, and I don't want to bug people, but at the same time, we've had exceptional experiences with people who I barely even know that have helped get us back on the road when our Cherokee blew a radiator in Colorado, or when our little Honda, even just driving back from Wisconsin this year, lost an alternator, so.
Yeah, that's the one thing where I have to say that social media and having a community has been really helpful with what we do, where we're traveling
Totally
all the
agree.
time. And I don't care if it's the truck, the semi, or if it's the Jeep or the pickup or whatever. If I'm on the road if we're on the road somewhere and something goes wrong, I can, as long as I've got cell service, I can post up on Facebook and say, hey, do I know anybody around here? I have a lot of people that will contact me and say, hey, just about everybody. Where, my daughter is stuck in this town. Do you know anybody?
Yeah.
And I'll say, maybe I don't know anybody particular, but let's see if my network does.
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
all of a sudden, boom, we got somebody over there, pulling her out of a muddy field or something, whatever, that just happened in a friend in Alabama. His daughter was in Alabama and he was like in Arizona, and he's like, I need somebody over in this area. And I'm like, oh, well, let me see what I can do.
Yeah, I totally agree. The community can be so good, and social media is an excellent platform if you need assistance. And that's exactly what happened to us when our alternator went out in a town of 81 people in a canyon in Montana. And thanks to the off-road community and the network that we have, we were able to get it towed to Spokane and then get the thing fixed in Spokane, and be on the way the next day. And it was amazing. And I like I said, I've broken down enough times to know how to do this now. So, but yeah, it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, we lost an idler pulley on the Cherokee coming through. Oh, it was the Arizona Indian Nations, and literally we were 2.5 hours from anybody that we knew. I made a post, and I had a guy named Cody Folsom. Luckily he's a one of our racers. He's a Cherokee guy, and he goes, oh, I know what part you need. Boom. He went, bought it locally, drove, handed it to me, helped me replace it, and then drove home.
Yeah.
But I had two other people that offered to bring parts from other parts of Arizona, just to help out. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, no kidding. That's awesome. We broke down in our Cherokee. We lost a AC compressor pulley, and we got scooped up by a trucker who was also a Jeeper, and we ended up with that Cherokee on the flatbed of a truck, and he took us to his house in Henderson, and we offloaded it, and We went to O'Reilly's, bought all the components. He's like, well, might as well just replace everything while we're here. And his wife cooked us dinner and all this stuff. And he recharged the AC system. And it was a late night, but he got us back on the road. I mean, this was just the kindness of a stranger who also was a Jeeper. And, he didn't, you help each other out, We need more of that in the world.
Yeah, we do. Absolutely. And that's the greatest thing. These always come back to that with our industry or our lifestyle, the off-road lifestyle industry, is that, there's a kinship there. Unlike, I think, most, and I think what it is that people can do this or are enthusiasts everywhere.
Yeah.
I
agree. I think that's a really good point. When I joke, I wasn't joking. When I say we're united by horsepower, this is, they say music is the universal language. Well, if there's a second universal language, it might be horsepower. And I remember I don't know, a couple of years ago, I was looking on I think it was Facebook, and there was this group of people. I think they were in India or Pakistan. I don't remember, somewhere in that area of the world. And they had, one guy had a Jeep, one guy had a Land Cruiser. There were a couple of other Mitsubishis, there were a couple of, all kinds of stuff. And they were just out having a great time on the trails, wheeling, and like, that is universal. Like, I'm going, man, that looks like a lot of fun, And again, I don't care if I'm in, if I'm in Arizona or Japan. I mean, people who are into cars and trucks, they're into it. And like, I don't care if you're into lowriders and I'm into lifted Chevys, but we both respect the fact that we both love automotive stuff, then I'm totally cool.
Right. It's
And again,
motorheads.
like, I know, yeah, gearheads and all that stuff, motorheads and all that, like, it's awesome. I just today, this is kind of ridiculous, but just today I was selling I had a brewing kit, like I used to brew beer. And I meet this guy, we agree on a price, and we meet at just the convenience store parking lot around the corner from my house. And I show up in my right-hand drive turbo diesel JDM Mitsubishi Pajero. And this guy, and he's from Germany, and he's like, "Is that a diesel?" I'm like, "Uh-huh." Yeah. And he's like, "Did you bring it in from Japan?" I was like, "Yeah, it came from Japan." And well, then he starts telling me, he's got an Xterra, and he just put a new engine in it. And we start talking about stories about going off-roading and camping and traveling. And suddenly my wife's texting me. She's like, "Did you meet a new best friend or something? What's going on?" I like, "Are you okay? Send me a text if you're in trouble." And it just turned out to be another guy that was into trucks and four-wheel drive and camping and outdoor stuff, and we just kind of started hitting it off. And I'm like, man, this is so cool. It's amazing how a common interest like motor vehicles, motorsports, cars, trucks, whatever, can lead to friendships. And I mean, listen, the guy who picked us up in his semi truck back in like 2017 outside of Las Vegas, I'm still friends with him. I see him at King of the Hammers and stuff, and still keep in touch with it. Another buddy of mine, Greg Gardner, who lives out in Colorado. Yep. We had another another failure with the Cherokee when the radiator went out. It was like 100 degrees outside. I posted on Facebook, and he's like, if you need somewhere to work on it, I got a shop. I'm like, where are you? And I think he's outside of Fruita, Colorado. And so I'd never met him. We were friends on Facebook, but I didn't know him. But he opened up his shop. I think he maybe even went out and gotten coolant for us. And he let us, dirty up his shop and all that stuff. And, we've been friends with him ever since. My wife oftentimes rides with him at Jeep Safari. She's done the flat fender run with him out there, and, and met his wife and all that. And, it's so cool, the friendships, lifelong friendships. I did the JP Magazine Dirt and Drive a couple of times, And I have a whole crew of friends that I keep in contact with, and I mean, I bought two trucks down in Texas, and I drove separately, but drove them back to Oregon, and a couple of those guys who I met on the dirt drive went out and looked at it for me, and and then we went and hung out with them, bought this truck, and drove home, and we see them every year at Jeep Safari, and I think too, with the events starting back up again and all that, it's a lot of these end up being almost family reunions, or at least off-road family reunions. Yes. I know people that avoid events like Jeep Safari like the plague because the trails are clogged up and all that stuff. And there's you can't get in to eat anywhere, and the camping's all taken up. And I totally understand that. For me, going to events like Jeep Safari, King of the Hammers, Overland Expo, all these things, it's not for me as an industry person. It's not about the event as much it is about the people. And I know that sounds cliche, like, oh, it's about the people, but it really, really is. When people like you and me live the lifestyle, I mean, we really do. This is what we do. I mean, yeah, I do other things too, but when I'm into car stuff, I'm into car stuff and truck stuff, and so going to these events for me is a I may only see some of these people once or twice a year, and so it's always great to catch up, And from a business perspective, it's great too. But from a personal perspective, even if I'm in the booth, getting to talk to people, getting to know people. I mean, I've met people that I've become friends with simply because I was in the booth at Warren Industries at a show. It's neat. I just appreciate that.
I totally look at those kind of events as I'm there for the people. Mm-hmm. To see friends, to meet friends, the whole social aspect of it. If I want to go trail wheeling or rock crawling or anything else, I'm out at that stuff at every one of our events, and I'm there the week before and for part of the week after, and I get all that I need of that just by setting up the courses and
Sure.
cruising around out in the areas. But it's when I go to Easter Jeep, I rarely ever go on a trail. And if I do, it's typically I'll get asked by one of the companies, hey, you want to come along with us on this run? Sure. And we go out and do that. But it's about the people. It's not about the run. It's not about the, oh, I can do this and, see what I'm doing, that kind of thing. I don't know if it's ever been that way for me and I guess it's maybe because of what I do in the industry, putting on the events, that I don't need that part of it.
Right.
It's more the social end of it that I really enjoy, the like-mindedness.
Yeah, it's that camaraderie. It's being with like-minded people who we all have a common interest. And I hear it every year about like some of the overlanding events where people go, "Why would I pay all this money to go camp in a field?" And you're like, well, you're missing the point. This isn't supposed to be a camping trip. This is a trip that is about camaraderie and sharing stories of what you've done. And yeah, you might hit some trails during or after the event, but that's not what this is about. Just like I look at Jeep Safari as like I can go to Moab and go wheeling whenever. I'm like, that's not what I think if you go to these events with the wrong mindset, you're going to have a bad time. But if your idea is, and this goes for pretty much all of the events in our industry, is, if you go with this idea that, well, I'm just there to go wheeling. Well, so is everybody. Everybody else is there too, and they're going to go wheeling. But what the best part of these shows is, in my opinion, is the people and getting to know other people who are into the things you're into.
Right. And that's one of the things that we always talk about is in our industry, and I'm sure it's this way in other industries as well, but at the big shows like that, it is about meeting your friends. Mm-hmm. And it's not, and the people in the industry have a completely different view of it than the enthusiasts that are in the lifestyle as well.
Yeah, that's a really observant point, Rich. I think that I know that there are people, and there's nothing wrong with this. There's some people that work in the auto industry that, and again, there's nothing wrong with this, but there are some people who aren't enthusiasts who work in the auto industry. They
Right.
could be selling blenders, or, they could be, doing something in apparel. They're not in it because they love cars. They're in it because it's a good job, and that's totally fine. There's the flip side to that. There are there are those of us who have gasoline and diesel running through our veins, and we love working in this industry and the lifestyle around it. And I left the auto industry briefly. In 2014, I went to work for a company in the construction, mining, and oil and gas industry that made parts for those for machines. And I thought, well, you know what? I can always have the automotive thing can always be my passion and can always be my hobby, but I don't need to work in it. And I remember seeing people going to. I only lasted like 3 months there. No, 6 months. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It didn't last a year. Let's put it that way. I remember watching people going to Jeep Safari and Overland Expo and all these shows and thinking, man, I miss going to those and seeing all the cool rigs and talking to people and being outside all the time and I really learned that I have a fondness for the industry itself. There's lots of really, really good people in it. There's a lot of people who share so many of the passions that are universal for people who are into cars, trucks, SUVs, whatever. Again, it doesn't matter if it's a Lamborghini or if it's a Lincoln. I mean, it's like, if you're cool about shared automotive passions, then I think that's cool. So this industry is full of lots of really awesome, passionate people.
Absolutely. And there's so many different aspects to the industry and lifestyle. It's especially, somebody that wants to get into get on the industry side of it and go to work for either a manufacturer, a retailer, a fab shop or whatever. There's all sorts of different types of jobs out there, and people are starving for employees.
Oh, God, that's true. I'd urge your listeners to go to the Warren Industries careers page.
Excellent.
Look at the opening positions. It's absolutely true. So many employers are looking for workers, and most people start out somewhere and work their way up. I certainly did, and getting your foot in the door, is a big deal, and trying to find those opportunities it can be difficult. But now is people are looking for employers so much that if you wanted to go work for a company that is in the automotive industry, there's probably more openings than there ever have been. And you might not start out as the owner of a fab shop or an off-road outfitter or something like that, but just getting your foot in the door is a big step. People ask me, just like I used to ask people, how do I get into this industry? And it's a lot of times it's being at the right place at the right time and knowing the right people as well as having the right skills. But again, you don't become the lead mechanic generally on day one.
Correct.
You don't become the head of the marketing department at your favorite tire company with your first go round. A lot of people make their way up, and I remember emailing people at companies and magazine outlets and stuff like that, saying, so I'm a fresh college grad. How do I get into this thing? And people would, you're probably going to end up at a small magazine, and you just kind of gotta make a pitch about what you can do and all that. And I I don't care if it's a fab shop, if it's or what it is. I mean, you gotta pitch yourself, right? And it turns out I end up working alongside of some of these people that I actually sent emails to back in the day when I was 22 years old or 23 years old and trying to find my first career job, and It's just funny, my late father used to say, "You never know where you're going to end up," and that's so true. And you just, I didn't set out to become a communications person at a four-wheel drive company. But I'm just, I thank my lucky stars for the opportunities that I've had. But it's an interesting journey.
So what is next for the Lilienthals?
Oh, what is next?
Besides Warren and the
Yeah,
the job that pays the bills
sure.
and that you're doing full time, the writing, adventures, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What do you got on the horizon?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
what are you
yeah.
looking to do?
Yeah. Well, our big thing that we have on the horizon right now, as a couple, my wife Mercedes and I, will be competing in the 2022 Alcan 5000 rally. So that 5,000 plus miles up through Canada and Alaska, and it's a time, speed, distance rally. So it's not how fast you get there; it's how accurately you get there. So we're very much looking forward to that. We're not sure which vehicle we're going to do it in this year, but that's definitely on the docket. And then, I think as the world continues to open up again from this whole COVID craziness, continuing to travel, and it's another passion of ours is, where are we going to go next? We were the last big trip we did was the Alcan 5000 in 2020 that went up to the Arctic Ocean, but we were in Iceland in 2019, and we rented the brand new 2019 at the time Suzuki Jimny, and solid front and rear axles, low range transfer case, and all that stuff. It's a little mountain goat, and it was fantastic. And so we got to do some of the off-roading out over there, and met some off-roaders and all that stuff. And so I think keeping on traveling and continuing to write at a pace that I want to write at, as opposed to necessity. And I don't know. It's such a weird time in all of our lives right now with COVID and all the things going on. And I look forward to some sort of normalcy here in the next couple of months, hopefully, and getting back out on the road more and meeting more people and hitting the trail more, hopefully, and that kind of stuff. So some big events, hopefully some more small events coming up, and more travel.
So that's awesome. The travel is one of the things that we'd like to do as well. Mm-hmm. We had planned to go to Costa Rica during the Christmas to New Year type this year. And
wow.
Because of the new thing, whatever it was that came out that was really fast and went through everybody really quick, we were afraid of getting stuck.
Yeah.
I don't know if stuck is the right word.
Totally get it.
Not being able to get out of Costa Rica. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, not being able to get home. Yeah, that's a concern.
We backed out of that opportunity, but we do want to do those kind of things. I want to get back to Australia, but the next time I go, I'd like to do like 6 months.
Oh yeah.
You
and me both.
18 days or whatever, 16 days, whatever we did in Australia last time. That's not even enough to see anything.
Yeah.
It'd be like coming to the States and getting a rental car and saying, okay, good, go see everything you can in 16 days. Good
exactly.
luck.
Now, you've been to Japan, haven't you?
Yes.
So that's my bucket list trip. And we were going to do it in 2020 until, COVID.
Right.
And, but there's a couple of people in Japan that I really want to meet, and a couple of off-road things that I really want to do and see. And that's my bucket list. But there's some other places we want to go to. But Japan is for the just what I don't even know how to say it. I say this with all due respect, but for the crazy car culture that's over there.
Yes.
You could probably just put me on the side of the road for a day, and I'd just be like, "Whoa, this is insane!" So,
do you know Neizumi?
Oh,
Suda?
So Oh! I know the name. I don't know him personally.
Okay. Well, when you get ready to go, he's down in the Nara area. It'd be what, the southeast,
Okay.
outside of Osaka.
Mm-hmm.
And he is a car guy. He's got a fab shop. He builds buggies. They build
Yeah.
drifters. He's got a, what is it, a Camaro
Oh, wow.
that is like, a Fast and Furious type setup. I mean, he's
Yeah.
pretty cool, and have to hook you up with him. But we
Yeah.
went there. He has an off-road event that he does every year there, rock crawl, and then he, with his fab shop and everything, and then
Yeah.
we took the bullet train from there up to Tokyo, and that was insanity.
Yeah, that's what I hear. He's the guy that has the rock crawling course that you see in all the photos,
Yes.
right? That's kind of like lined with bamboo and like, or tall trees or whatever it is. And,
Yep.
and he holds like the Jimny rock crawl event there and all that
That is him.
stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. So I have a friend who lives over there. His name is Christopherson Domingo.
Yes.
And,
I know Christopherson. Yep.
Yeah. He runs Wani Media, and I've talked to him quite a bit, and I definitely have to meet him one of these days. And but yeah, it's also like fascinating. The off-road culture is so different in different places. Japan with its Jimny rock crawling versus Iceland with its big balloon tire, Super Duties and everything else.
Right.
It's so cool to just experience how everybody else does it, because we're all doing it, but we're all doing it a little bit different. It's kind of like going to a chili cook-off. Everybody's making chili, but none of them are the same.
Correct. That's a great analogy. I like that. So yeah, if you when you get that life list trip to Japan, let me know. And
Yeah, I will.
I've got some other friends over there too that we can hook you up with, and you guys can meet
Sweet.
them and really immerse yourself in the culture. It's phenomenal. It really
Yeah.
is. They're
That's awesome.
so polite and helpful.
Uh-huh.
I remember we were standing on a corner in, we were outside of Tokyo in one of the suburb areas, and we were trying to get to one place, and the Ichigawa was where we were trying to get to. And Shelly goes, "Oh, I know where that's at. We saw it on the train yesterday." So we looked it up, and we were going, instead of Ichigawa, we went to Ichikawa. All right, and we went like 45 minutes, maybe an hour in the wrong direction on the train out of
jeez.
Tokyo to the other side. So instead of going west, we went east
Oh boy.
or something like that, and we'd counted and said, okay, it's going to be 17 stations. Well, the train line ends at 15 stations when we realize we're not going the right direction. So then we turn around and go back, and then we get off at the wrong one, which, because it was the Kawagawa thing, and we're just standing on the street corner. It was Shelly, myself, and Josh England with all our luggage, and we just look like we're totally out of place.
Yeah.
3 large Americans,
Yeah.
and everybody else is, tiny, and they're, we just like, help. and people would stop and help, say, oh, okay, here's where, what you got to do. Whether they could speak English well or not, they were very, very helpful.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, it's definitely a place to go, and spending time in Tokyo, especially, there's I guess it's like the largest train station, Shinjuku. I'm probably not saying it right. Train station. At the time that we went, 2.2 million people a day went through that train hub.
It's almost incomprehensible.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when you stepped out of the tunnel, the walking tunnel, into the main corridors, it was like, what I equated it to spawning fish running up the river.
Yeah.
You just got in the flow and you had to keep up. Otherwise, you got
Yeah.
run over. And you had to find an eddy, which, right behind a pillar or something. And you would just sneak behind the pillar because everybody's going around the pillar. And you'd catch your breath and go, okay, are we still in the right direction? Are we going the right way?
Yeah.
It was just crazy how.
Like a stream of people.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, and everybody was moving fast. And the one thing about Japan, especially in the Tokyo area, everybody queues up really well. They'll stand in line and be all perfect and just everybody waiting. But when that door opens up, you can't hesitate.
Yeah.
You will get run over. It was like everybody's just da 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 da, and then doors open and it's just madhouse.
Wow.
Pretty crazy. So, is there anything that you want to talk about that you haven't? Can you think of?
Oh, yeah, I guess like one other thing that we do. I started a second blog in 2016 called Crankshaft Culture,
Right.
and Crankshaft Culture really envelops this idea that every car is an adventure, every vehicle is an adventure. We're united by horsepower. It's like we're all in it for the same thing. So I started this just before we went to New Zealand, and I got a taste of some of New Zealand and Australia, and so we've been running that. My wife and I have been running that since 2016, and we've got a really good Facebook group and social media as well as our blog site. So, but I think that just that idea of automotive open-mindedness and you might not be into Toyotas. Maybe you're a Jeep guy and you're not a Toyota guy, but take a look at something. You never know. You might be like, oh, you know what? That's actually really cool. Or you might not be into stock car racing, but you might take a look at it. Maybe you might find something you like. Open mind, like we're all in it together. And listen, you don't have to like everything. I'm not some like automotive hippie here. I'm not like I'm just like but I have certain cars and trucks that I don't really like that much either. But you know what? Somebody does like it, and I'm never gonna look down my nose at them because they're passionate about they're passionate about S10 Blazers, and I have zero desire to own one. I have a friend who's he's nuts about them. He loves Blazers and S10s. And it's just never been something I've been into. But I just think his passion for it is awesome. Like, that's so cool. Like, here's this vehicle that I've always just never been into and never thought much about. And here's this guy, he just bought one that was up from Alaska, and he had it shipped across the U.S. and all this. And I'm like, there truly is a fan base for everything with wheels. It's unbelievable.
That's very, very true.
Mm-hmm.
That's very true. I may not be into what somebody is doing in that, like you said, with the S10 Blazers or, whatever they may be building, but the passion and the desire that they have to do it is still phenomenal. And
Exactly.
you don't know what drives that person, or the people that are in that part of, that niche.
Right.
And to me, I've never really been brand loyal to anything.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I may say this, Chevy did a really good job on this, or Dodge did a good job on this, or Ford did a good job on this, and
Right.
Nissan or Toyota, they all have their things that they did outstanding, and they all have things that they did that they screwed up.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt in that. And, it's cool. And I hope that when I do get a shop space again, that what I really want to do myself is collect specific vehicles that I've always wanted or have had in the past, and then bring it back to life.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I'm hoping I'll be able to do that. Shelly gets her art space so she can do her woodworking or jewelry making or whatever it is she wants to do. We'll have 20 sections for her, and then we'll have a shop section for me. And then we'll meet in the middle for the welding and wood and metal cutting.
There you go. Next stop, world peace.
There you go. That's it. Yeah, that's crazy now, isn't it? Anyway.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right. Well, Andy, I want to say thank you so much for coming on board and spending some time with us and talking about your history and your passions. And
That's
I've always appreciated your willingness to answer questions for me and, pick up that phone, or like when you gave us the tour around the Warren facility there. I really appreciated that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, and it's an honor to be on the show. I appreciate it, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you at Jeep Safari.
Yep, you'll see us there. Excellent.
Sounds awesome.
Okay, take care.
You too.
If you enjoy these podcasts, please give us a rating. Share some feedback with us via Facebook or Instagram, and share our link among your friends who might be like-minded. Well, that brings this episode to an end. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you next week with Conversations with Big Rich. Thank you very much.